Hello, everybody. Namaskar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on which part of the globe you have joined us from. I'm Tanaya, joining you live from Bangalore today. And welcome to the second season of the Cradle webinar series. If you remember, last month we drew curtains on our first season. We wrapped up the season with a panel discussion wherein we kind of did a recap of all the 13 sessions that we did over a span of 1 year. Well, here we are back again. We are here to set the ball rolling for the second season. And we do look forward to your love, blessings, and support as we move forward. We have always heard health is wealth. And in the pandemic, we have kind of realized the importance of this age old adage more than ever. Uh, Today, in the session, we will talk about health. We will talk about how physical and emotional health are intertwined, how our mind impacts the body, and vice versa. The topic for today's conversation is the body mind connection. And to discuss the topic with me today, I have a very special guest yet again, and this time from the field of medical science. May I please have him on screen? Well, dear audience, there on the screen, you are currently seeing Dr. Anurag Nath. Dr. Nath is a practicing doctor at the KDCRC and SRSK Hospital, Moradabad, UP, India. He's a former house surgeon with the Kuch Bihar Government Medical College and Hospital. Academically, Dr. Nath is an MDS PGT in the field of maxillofacial pathology and forensic odontology. He's also currently the editor-in-chief of a multilingual web magazine called Bliss, which talks about life and growth. Very happy to have you, Dr. Nath, in our session today, and pretty much looking forward to learn from you.
Thank you, and it's been an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, like every time, I will jump to the topic right away. We were talking about the age-old adage, health and health is wealth, and we were also kind of talking about how the pandemic has made us realize the importance of this more than ever. Now, one aspect of our health, whenever we talk about health, which is kind of taken the center stage in our current times, is definitely hygiene. So we are talking about health and hygiene in almost the same breath now, especially when it comes to preventive health. So wanted to understand your thoughts on it, or how really hygiene impacts our health. Dr. Nath.
Oh, okay. So first of all, what we need to understand here is that our concept of health as a whole, in general population I'm talking, is somewhat incomplete, because most of us understand health to be something which is devoid of any kind of disease. Means, to our simplistic terms, health is something which is devoid of any kind of disease or any kind of infirmity. Anyone who is thought to be healthy means, in our terms, is devoid of any kind of disease. But if we go by the definition given by the World Health Organization, it has a definition given in 1948, which is the most basic one. It says that health is a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not just the absence of disease or infirmity. So in this particular definition, we come across some terms like physical health, mental health, social health, and not just the absence of any disease or infirmity. Now, after a few years, this definition of WHO given by the WHO has been upgraded so many times. The latest definition given by WHO has some add-ons. They are talking about emotional health. They are talking about the work-life balance. They are talking about the ability of a particular person to give fruitful results in his work. All these things come under health. So if we see that health as a whole is a holistic approach, means someone can be physically healthy, but if he is not mentally healthy, or if he is mentally depressed, then he cannot be called healthy. If he is socially isolated, then he cannot be called healthy. So all these factors come into play, and also an important factor is that of the environment. So all these factors come into play when we are talking about health as a whole. It is very interesting. I would like to mention here a small thing here, a small fact, that in the part of the East, in the eastern part of the globe, the seers, who are called the rishis, the world teachers, they have already given this mind body connection, mind body and spirit connection for years. Since time immemorial, we have heard their various teaching, we have read about their sayings based on health, based on hygiene, based on sadachar, and they have already given in detail and expensive, very expensive definition about this health. One of the seers of the recent years, whom I very much adore, is Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra. And it is very interesting to note that this definition of WHO was given in the year 1948, whereas Sri Thakur in his sayings about health is saying in 1920s, as early as 1920s, when the medical science was not that developed, was not that advanced. Here Sri Thakur is talking about health, and all the factors he's giving in health is the physical health. Talking about mental health. He's talking about spiritual health. He's talking about the emotional well-being, the social health. All these things together point or converge together in a particular concept of health. So when we are judging something to be healthy or not, we have to bring into our notice all these factors which are given by the seers of our era. Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra, one of the, I think in recent past, one person, one seer or the world teacher who has given every mechanism of everything that is going on in our life day in and day out is Sri Thakur. So his explanations are so logical and so scientific that we cannot ignore any particular aspect of this health. We cannot call someone healthy just because he's physically attractive or physically healthy. We have to take in notice. We have to take the understanding of his physical aspect, mental aspect, social aspect, emotional well-being. Everything has to be taken into consideration. And the next part of the question brings us into hygiene. Now the point is, when we talk about hygiene, the word hygiene, quote unquote, it is very limited and very bounded as compared to the translation given by the seers. The seers of the eastern part of the world introduce us to the term called sadachar. Now, this sadachar might not be the complete translation. It is something beyond the scope of hygiene. Why? Because if we go by the definition or meaning of hygiene, hygiene just means a kind of cleanliness. It is a kind of the physical act of cleaning our body, washing our hands, keeping our environment, keeping our belongings clean and all. But sadachar, what exactly is the meaning of sadachar? It is actually the amalgamation of two words. In Sanskrit, the word sat comes from the root word as or astitva, and achar means code of conduct or regulations which nourishes this astitva. So anything and everything which nourishes our existence as a whole is called sadachar. So sadachar as a concept, of course, it encompasses the basic hygiene or basic cleaning amenities all over, whatever is there. Washing our clothes regularly, keeping our environment clean, washing our hands before eating. Everything comes under sadachar. But it is not just limited to that. We have to understand that sadachar encompasses a large sphere of code of conduct, which includes our mental sadachar. That is physical sadachar, mental sadachar, and spiritual sadachar. These three basic aspects together they form the sadachar. So if one has to be healthy, one must follow the principles of sadachar. And all of them are interrelated to each other. One cannot have physical health without this physical sadachar. And that we can understand specifically after this pandemic period, because for centuries, or rather, let's say for decades, this particular concept of sadachar has been ignored. We sometimes forget how important it is. We consider it is too much trivial or too much basic to even talk about it. We don't discuss among ourselves. We don't talk about this sadachar in families. We don't teach this particularly to the young kids. But after this pandemic hit us, we came to a understanding that between this deadly pandemic and between our life, there is just one protective membrane, or there is just one shield of protection, and that is sadachar. It has come to this that without washing hands, without keeping our environment and our belongings clean, we cannot even live. This is a very, I mean, this is an interesting point at this juncture when we are talking about going to Mars, we are talking about World Economic Forum, or we are talking about global warming. We are ignoring the very basic principles of hygiene, and that has cost us a pandemic here. That is what I think.
Thank you, Dr. Nath. And I think you started on a very important note, wherein you talked about busting some of the myths related to what we consider as health. You talked about the definition of health, or health being holistic in nature, which encompasses different aspects with the physical, mental, emotional, and then you also talked about how WHO has brought in different other aspects in its current definition. And you also talked about how the seers in the East have been talking about it, since a long time, and it was very much there. Just that the pandemic, brought it so much at the forefront. You also talked about, the term sadachar, which is, like, I would say, it is a superset, hygiene being a subset of it. And when you said sadachar, and I would just, again, for the benefit of my audience, I would just repeat it. It is a code of conduct which nourishes the existence. And our beloved spiritual master, Sri Thakur, who is one of the greatest world teachers, talked about it so vehemently in many of his messages. I remember when we were very young kids. So one of the followers of Sri Thakur used to frequent our home, and then at that time, anytime you would see us, even our hands are getting closer to our nose or our mouth, he would just, make sure that we are, running and washing it. So that time we really didn't understand the importance. But this time in the pandemic, every time it was being talked about, I could remember that grandpa of ours, and I would, talk about him today, Mr. Raghunandan, Sri Raghunandan Bhattacharya, who used to, talk about it so vehemently. And I kind of remembered him so much, as the entire world was talking about, Sadachar, and that was in line with the principles, with the messages of the great world teacher, Sri Thakur. You talked about mental well-being, and mental well-being has always been a subject which has not been talked about, which has been kind of sidelined. I would say was a taboo subject. Okay, people are scared to talk about it. People feel embarrassed to talk about it. But then again, these days we are talking a lot about it, lot more openly than we ever did before. Any reasons why do you think it is suddenly in the forefront, Dr. Nath?
So you correctly pointed out that this particular aspect of health, that is the mental health, has actually been a taboo, and it is very unfortunate that the people, mostly the people from the Southeast Asian countries, and I mean mostly the people from the Indian subcontinent, they consider this topic of mental health to be something of a taboo. They don't discuss it. Not even the healthcare professionals. I have seen many colleagues, many healthcare professionals who work with myself, and I have seen them, they are not talking about it. Why? Because in their subconscious mind, it is always that if we seek help for our mental well-being, that means we are showing the world our weakness. That is a particular thing, that is a particular problem which we all have to fight. And that is very unfortunate that even today in this world of 2022, we have ignored this mental health so much that we are up to no good about in this particular field, in this field of the mental hygiene or mental health, I would say. But what happened after pandemic is, the pandemic did not just weaken our systems, it has exposed our already weakened systems. This particular mental health has always been a problem. We did not talk about it, we did not discuss about it, we did not propagate it enough. So this weak part of our healthcare system has been exposed so vehemently by this pandemic. And pandemic, when this pandemic hit us very hard, there was a research conducted in a very leading university in the year of 2020s, most probably in May or June. That research clearly stated that it is not that everyone around the globe, not all the people of the globe will be affected by coronavirus. Not everyone will be positive, COVID positive. But there is a high probability, that research said that there is a high probability that almost every individual of this globe will be mentally depressed, anxious, tensed, angry, and under this plight of depression. So it is kind of a fact now, as we have seen after 2 or 3 years, that this depression, this anxiety, mental well-being is so much talked about. Because after this pandemic, the whole system has changed. Everything has been weakened in every strata. This is not that I'm not talking about just the working class people, not just the grown-ups or the adults. Even in the kids, little kids, those kids who have this tender age of going to the play schools or kindergartens, they are exposed to long hours of the screens in the laptops or mobiles. Why? Because of the online classes. And online classes are wonderful substitutes for the teachings, no doubt about that. But there are also various researches which are showing that this long screen hours in mobiles, tabs or laptops or computers, they are affecting the development of brain in the small children, very small children. They are affecting the development, and that is a very problem, very big problem actually. Now in certain, if we go in just a higher age group, in the those children who are talking about, who are discussing about their careers, who are doing something to make their careers, they are tensed, they are anxious. Why? I remember a junior of mine, I was talking to him a few months back. He said that he is very much anxious because he is anxious of the placement. The companies will not come to his college or the institution because after the this COVID pandemic, the equation has changed drastically. So he is not sure whether the companies, good companies, will come to his college for the placement. Everywhere, even the small scale businessmen, I have seen many businessmen, small scale businessmen who have switched fields, who have changed their occupation altogether. In many companies, the employees have been sacked or fired, because we all know that economy has suffered so much. Economy has suffered a huge blow, and it is actually it is impossible for all the companies, not the fault of companies also. It is impossible for the companies to go like that only before the pandemic. So many employees have been sacked, many employees have been fired. In the case of the job, even those people who have not lost their job or who have not faced such kind of problem, day in and day out, every single day, in every news channel, there is a environment of the fear. Everyone in our households, we have seen the elderly people, they are always talking about the numbers. How many people in the last 24 hours got COVID positive? How many people lost their lives? They are worried about their own children, own families who are working outside. They are worried, they are tense, they are depressed. So basically what happens is, this is a field or environment of depression, and negativity has suspended all over the place. So because of the pandemic, it was there before the pandemic also, but after that pandemic, this already weakened system of mental health has been exposed, has been brought forward. So after that only, all the individuals all over the globe who have faced this depression day in and day out, they are talking about mental health. They are seeking this help desperately. So that is why I think that that is the reason that after this pandemic, we are hearing about it. We are listening more of the stories of this, mental health, and more people are seeking the mental health out there.
Absolutely. And apart from the economic impact, or the environment of negativity, fear, which is being fed to us by the media, also to an extent, the lack of socialization, social interactions. Because at the end of the day, we are social animals. We get our energy from each other. Those interactions, conversations. Uh, in fact, and there was a research conducted in one of the leading universities, wherein people linked the longevity of life of an individual to the extent to the extent of socialization the person does. So such is the impact of socialization on us and our overall health. So this lack of socialization also definitely led to all these mental health issues. And you are talking about depression, anxiety, and I would say we are seeing cases of psychosis, delusions, hallucinations, sleeping disorders at the list, which is really grappling the entire world today. So since we are talking about mental health, and we are trying to explore the connection of the body with the mind, how does physical health play a role in controlling our thoughts, emotions, overall mental well-being? While there are so many best practices which are being talked about, but anything specific which you practice as a doctor, or which you advise to people when it comes to taking care of our bodies?
What I understand, or I think most of the people who are in the healthcare system, they would agree with me, I guess, that most of the diseases which affect a particular person can be checked, can be stopped, or can be prevented if we just adjust our go of life. 90 to 95% of the diseases will be cured or prevented if our lifestyle is changed. Because you see, in most of the households today, what we are observing is a few basic diseases are there which are affecting most of the elderly population. Hypertension is there, diabetes is there, and as we have already discussed in this particular period, because of the pandemic and all, there are all sorts of medical diseases, mental diseases, mental illnesses. All these things are there. So what can we do to improve our lifestyle? What can we do to prevent everything, all these things coming to our life? How can we prevent it? So again, we have to go back to our roots, because what we see is, we have already understood, we have already heard about this, that prevention is better than cure. That whatever the disease is there, before affecting, we should do something that it is prevented. So again, if we go back to our roots, our seers have advocated, have put down some points, a few points in which general lifestyle of a population, of a people, can be improved. So in our scriptures, in the seers have given so many things, so many lifestyle changes they have advocated. Sometimes people get confused that so many things are there, what we'll do. In that particular situation, I would say that look forward to the most logical explanation given by the most logical seer, if you have any. Ramakrishna Dev, Swami Vivekananda, Sri Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra, Rishi Aurobindo, and a series of such seers have given, have advised, have propagated so many things on the lifestyle changes which can make people healthy in all the fronts: physical, mental, spiritual, social, in all the fronts. So, if we talk about the lifestyle changes as advocated by Sri Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra, I find it very much logical, and I would like to share a few things here. Sri Sri Thakur advocates his disciples and trains them, asks them to follow 5 point principles daily. On a daily basis, the initiated followers of Sri Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra, they follow a 5 point principle. It starts from Yajan, Ishtavriti, Swasthaini, and Sadachar. To put it in simple words, Yajan means individual form of sadhana, avowed activity or tapasya. Means whatever we do in meditation, daily chanting of name and meditation, that comes, and prayer and all the spiritual activities for this particular individually, on an individual plane, that comes under Yajan. And Yajan means to propagate those principles of being and becoming in the environment. Because as we have just discussed, and you have wonderfully explained, that we are social beings. We cannot live just by our own. Our happiness depends on others also, our environment also. So if I want to make myself happy, I have to make my environment happy. I have to make my environment propitious for the health, good for our for my own well-being. That is why it is very important to propagate those principles of life and growth, of being and becoming, into my environment. That comes under Yajan. Ishtavriti is something like voluntary offering something to my ideal. See, in our Orient, or in our eastern part of the globe, everything comes down to Guru, spiritual teacher. Everything. If we see the examples of the greatest men who have taken advance in the present time, Swami Vivekananda, he came to Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Dev as Narendranath. And that Narendranath was not aware of his potential, he was not aware of his capabilities. Neither his parents, nor his friends, nor his relatives, none of them would say that he would transform into some such a mighty saint, who would represent his own culture, his country in Chicago. But that was known only to his guru, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Dev. And it was his guru, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Dev, who transformed this Narendranath into Swami Vivekananda. That is a live example. We are talking about rulers, we have seen Sri Ram, examples of Sri Ram. Sri Ram didn't rule his kingdom just because he wanted to rule it. He ruled his kingdom to fulfill the wishes of his guru, Rishi Vasishtha and Rishi Vishwamitra. We can see the latest example of a great ruler, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. He ruled the entire Maratha kingdom just to please his guru, Swami Ramdas. So this is the principle of the East. This is the principle of the Orient. The, uh, just a minute, a call has come. Am I audible? Actually,
You are. I know.
okay, okay.
Sometimes when these calls come,
Uh,
everything
yeah, yeah.
is a maybe problem. Let's carry on.
Okay, okay. So as we are discussing that eastern part of the globe, Swami Vivekananda, Chhatrapati Shivaji, how have they become this part of the greatness, this peak of the greatness? Because they are following the principles of their guru. So, in order to be healthy, what I am correlating here is, in order to be healthy, one must have a minimum sense of discipline. Without being disciplined, one cannot expect oneself to be healthy. And Sisi Thakur gives a very beautiful saying. He says that if you want to be disciplined, you have to be disciple first. Without being a disciple, one cannot expect one to be disciplined. So, in this pandemic period, let us consider this pandemic period. For 2.5 years or more than 2.5 years, people have been taught continuously, propagated through televisions, news channels. World Health Organization has put forward so many projects to teach the people that you have to maintain social distancing, you have to wear masks, you have to wash your hands. These are very basic and trivial, basic, very basic teachings. But us, the grown-ups, are unable to follow it. If for a particular point of time, let's say that if I go outside for a while now, I will find 90% of the population is not wearing masks. Even if all the things have been taught, all the things have been, I would say, fed upon in the telephones, in the World Health Organization media meetings, by the countries, all the news channels, still people are unable to follow it, unable to follow the teachings. Why? Because they are lacking that basic sense of discipline which comes after accepting someone as my guru or the ideal. So first of all, the first thing which comes to my mind is accepting someone as my spiritual guide or teacher. Because see, let's make it simple. If I want my kid to be a cricketer, the first step is to send him to someone who can teach him that, right? I have to send him to a cricketing academy, a nice cricketing academy under the tutelage of a cricketer who can teach him those basic skills. If I want my kid to be a singer, I have to send him to someone who can sing well. Likewise, if I want to be a good human being with all my aspects, health and environment and all the aspects coordinated in a good way, then I must learn from someone who has already done so in his life. That is the basic principle. We have to follow someone who has done so, who has got rid of all the complexes, all the passions there is. Only by following that spiritual master or spiritual teacher, we can follow it. Now, coming to the main part of the question, what are the measures which we can take to keep our physical health physically active? So first of all, I would like to say, out of these 5 principles, two most prominent features or principles are there given by Sri Sri Thakur and Nukul Chandra, which directly solve the problem. One is called Swasthani, another is called Sadachar. Sadachar we have already discussed in the first question, I think. So Swasthani, the principle of Swasthani. To understand this word, let's break it down to simpler terms. Swasthan comes from three basic Sanskrit words, Su, Asti, and Ayan. Su, the word Su, prefix Su, wherever we are using Su, it means good. Asti means astitva or existence, and Ayan means path. So basically, it comes to it, the rules and regulation which paves the path of well-being. The path of well-being is called Swasthani. So among these Swasthani, Sri Thakur advocates 5 basic principles. Swasthani is a set of 5 rules or principles which one has to follow. The initiated followers of Sri Thakur and Nukul Chandra, they regularly follow, daily, on a daily basis, they follow these 5 principles. So the first principle, Sri Thakur compares this human body with a temple of a deity. There is a Bengali saying, Sri Thakur says in his words, in his saying, he says, Sri Bigroher Mondir Bhebe Jotno Kori Shorirtake. Means in rough translation, if we say, it is considering this body to be the temple of a deity, take care of this body. Because, in most of the Eastern schools of thoughts, in the spiritual seekers, they consider this body to be the house of the god, house of the divinity, the deity. And the people are very fond of, maintaining or taking care of the deities and the house of the deities. So, Sri Thakur is saying that Sri Vigroher Mundir Bhebe, considering this to be the house of the god, the temple of the god, take care of that body. Then he says that যত্ন করি শরীরটাকে সহনপটু সুস্থ রাখিস বিধি মাফিক পালিশ থাকে. So he asked them to ask all of us to maintain this body, to make it immune to the diseases, take care of it, of the body. So in this particular principle, what he says is we have to follow all the principles, all the procedures, and all the rules and regulations which take care of our health, which makes our body healthy. So in the first principle of Swasthani, Sri Thakur tells us to be healthy. Second principle, we all know that in our human life, there are a lot of problems, lot of complexes and passions are there, which make us deviate from our path. We have heard about it in many different scriptures given by the seers. We have heard about it as the lust, anger, ego, and all those vices which affect us. Sri Thakur says that we should not suppress it, and neither should we let them deviate us. We should bring into account a meaningful adjustment of these complexes. So, if we meaningfully adjust these complexes and go on in our life in ideal centric way, then we will get success. This is the second principle of sustain. And the third principle, what does the third principle say? Third principle gives a clue to the mechanism of doing a particular work. What happens is our human mind is a very interesting organ actually, because the human mind is a stream of continuous thoughts. The thoughts come and go, but if we get attached to any of the thoughts, then we are done. We cannot perform any particular work. So Sisi Thakur says that whenever and whatever, even if a little amount of good thought comes to your mind, and if that thought has to be executed into action, don't wait for anything, and then and there complete the task. Why? Because we know, we have all experienced that something, some work which we need to be done, and if we are procrastinating, that we will not do this now, we'll do it tomorrow or after a while, then that work will never be done. Like that is like a file that goes on that is submitted to a desk, and after that a few more files come on the top of it, and the file which goes on the below, it goes on forever. It doesn't get completed, or it doesn't we cannot execute that work. So Sisi Thakur in the third principle of sustain says this is the mechanism of doing or completing a particular work. We remember discussing in the first question itself that WHO has given an add-on, that how fruitful work can be done. That is also a criteria for being healthy. So Sisi Thakur answers that question in this way, that if you want to be healthy, if you want to have a healthy work life, then you have to follow this. Now, fourth principle is very important, that how we are socializing. As we have already discussed, that our happiness is dependent on others as well, because we are social animals, social beings. So for social well-being, it is very important that I keep my environment healthy. I take care of my environment, my neighbors, those people who come in contact with me in my work field, those people who are coming in regular contact with me, my family, my friends, and everyone else. So if we keep our work life, if we keep our environment healthy, we'll automatically get that positive vibe, that positive output from all of them. So fourth principle is taking care of your environment. And fifth and last principle of the Sosteni is, I think, in my views, it is the most important one, because all these aspects. First one is keeping myself healthy. Second one is adjusting the complexes. Third one is how to complete the work, a given task. Fourth one is taking care of environment. All these are very diverse topics, which are very diverse from each other, different from each other. But all those can be converted together into one when we follow that one ideal, single ideal, or we follow the spiritual teacher, our guide. Then only all these things will come together. So fifth principle is taking care or serving our ideal through sustain udvritti, that we call. But all these five principles, when they come into play, then only we can see the healthy lifestyle coming into this. See, as we have discussed, physical well-being, that is given by the first principle. We are discussing about the WHO definition, right? The physical well-being, complete state of physical well-being. The first principle of Sosteni covers that. Second is mental well-being. Mental well-being, how? Because if we are not under the influence of the complexes, we are already mentally healthy. We are already maintaining a positive set of mind. So that is fulfilled by the second principle. WHO has given an add-on that a person must be able to do a fruitful work, must execute some work into practice. So that is given by the third principle. Then we are talking about the social health. Nobody talks about social health. WHO has given just, I think they have just theorized about it, but they have no practical demonstration of how physical health can be achieved. But this fourth principle of sustaining already leads us to the social health. So all this principle, if we see that to be physically healthy, this following of Swasthani is, I think, of utmost importance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was quite exhaustive. Thank you for taking us to the principles of Sastvani as propagated, as taught to us by Shri Shri Thakur, and it kind of encompasses the different aspects of health, which we talked about right at the start of the session. Now, there is a book which I read every day. It's called the Women's Code. It's called the Nari Niti uh, it's a Bengali book, and if I translate it, it's called the Women's Code. And since many of my women friends, my female friends, would be watching the session today, I'd like to talk about in a few aspects which Rishi Thakur highlights. One thing he focuses on it is food. Okay, what should we eat? And it is not only for women, it is for everybody. The kind of food that we eat definitely impacts our body and mind at the same time. And he says that, and I will he says that you should have such food which can be digested easily, and which again can give rise to hunger. And because of all this chain, this can give nourishment or the required amount of energy to your body. Another message which I will read from Sri Thakur's holy book, The Message, Volume 1, Food and Drink. Pleasing the irritation of hunger with easy absorption gives nourishment that raises the vitality up. That is diet. So take thy food and drink to invigorate thyself. So very important. Food is a very important aspect when we talk about health. And whenever we are talking about our body as temples of the deity, as outlined by Dr. Nath, right in the first principle of Saswini, we definitely would not take things which kind of is not in alignment with how a temple should be taken care of. And then another thing which Shashi Thakur talks about is hard work. He talks about, and that is in the book, The Women's Code that I'm talking about, that we should do so much of hard work that we should perspire. Okay. And that is also another way of keeping ourselves healthy. Then he talks about, singing. I'm talking about a lot of things, but then these are so basic to our being and becoming that even one, if we are able to practice, it kind of really helps us. Singing, he says that I don't know of any other pranayam as good as singing is. And he also talks about that I don't know any heart enchanting exercise which is there like dancing. Okay, so these are all things which impacts our health and happiness. And then another thing he tells us that be aware of the medicinal herbs around. And these days, even in the West, right, people are talking about herbs and Ayurveda. But then Sisi Thakur told us, and especially us women folk, he said that, which disease can be cured by which medicinal herb? It should be in your fingertips. It should be in your fingertips. And one thing which I practice currently is having we call it the thankuni leaves. Okay, and it's in English it is called the Centilla asiatica. So while I don't have it in Bangalore, so there's a tablet which comes made of this herb, which Sri Thakur has really taught us to have, which kind of and nowadays, and I will talk about why it is important and why I'm talking about is because, see, in the current times, the mental well-being has become very important. And as Dr. Nath talked about, depression, anxiety, other psychiatric disorders. And if you look at, and I would urge my audience to really do some research, talk about, ask your doctors or read about it, okay, in different journals about the Centilla asiatica, which has a huge positive impact on our psyche, on our nervous system. Okay, so this is one thing, one of the medical herbs which Rishi Thakur has talked about. And if you can, read the Bliss web magazine that I talked about while introducing Dr. Nath, you can find it in Facebook. The magazine itself is it's bringing out editions where we are talking about those medicinal herbs in our different editions, for the consumption and for the understanding of our dear audience. So people can, we will put the link maybe of the Bliss web magazine somewhere in our page. You may like to check out and look out for those important messages. Now, Dr. Nath brought about a very important point that we will not be able to follow certain rules and regulations unless we're attached to a spiritual idol, unless we become disciples, because discipline and disciple, he kind of talked about it as told by Shashi Thakur. So I will talk about here a quote from the great Nobel laureate Alexis Carrel. He was a famous French surgeon and he was awarded the Nobel Prize as well. He said that men will never enthusiastically obey the laws of rational conduct unless he considers the laws of life as command of a personal God. Who is that personal God? Personal God to me is a guru, is a living ideal. Right? And I'll give an example. Now, I have two supplements and it's a personal example. So I take two supplements. One, in the morning, there's Thankuni leaves that I talked about, right? That medicine, and another is a vitamin supplement in the which I take in the evening. But then, trust me, I forget the vitamin supplement almost every day, but I never forget to take that Thankuni tablet. And why I do that? Because this one, the first one, the morning which I'm taking, it is a commandment of my guru. And that's why, because of my love for my spiritual master, I never fail to take that. Okay. And it kind of, drives my action. It kind of drives my discipline. It kind of drives my will. But the other one, I'm very poor at that. I completely miss that every day. So, and that is what those small behaviors gets driven by our attachment to a spiritual idol. And similarly, like small things. Again, when it comes to, we all know that brushing teeth twice is good, and we have a dentist here also, so doctor who is there, who can talk about the benefits. But then, how many of us do it? Right now, I was off and on doing it, but when I got to hear that my Acharya Dev has asked us to do brushing in the night as well, I never fail to do it. Why this is happening? Because this behavior is being driven by my love and attachment to my ideal. So that is what I just wanted to do. My last question to you, Dr. Nath. Okay, and we are kind of moving towards the end of the session today. So, see, one, obviously, we talked about the importance of the physical well being and how it impacts the mind. You may also like to talk a little about how mind impacts our bodies. And also, we all know that our mind is kind of a chatterbox or a clutter house, whatever talk about. Something is going on it all the time. What are some of the easy ways which we can implement? It is not easy, I know, but then uh, some of the easy ways which you feel that can at least help us, the larger audience here, all of us, make a decent start.
Okay,
We will
so first of
go
all,
for this
yeah,
question and then open the floor for the audience questions. So maybe we can
okay,
spend around 5 minutes on this.
okay. So first of all, what we understand or what we know about mind as a whole is beyond the physiological functions of the brain, because mind as a whole is something, one of the mightiest instruments which we have at our disposal. uh, it is beyond our understanding what the mind can or cannot do. So there is a saying, the mind, human mind, is like that weapon which can either destroy oneself completely, or take oneself to the peak of success. That is dependent on the mind. So mind has two components. Briefly, if we say, mind has two components. One is the conscious part, and another is the subconscious part. And both the components have two different functions. The conscious mind, as we all know, conscious mind is something of a command center. It's someone who expresses its views continuously. As we were discussing rightly, you called it a chatterbox, because everything, whatever it watches, it has to express its views. We are walking down the road and we are seeing something, it will express its views then and there. Then see, this is that, you have to do that, he will come like that, everything like that. He goes on and on like that. That is the part of the conscious mind. But there is something called subconscious mind. And subconscious mind is the bulk, is the power of the strength of the mind. Conscious mind is just the tip of the iceberg, and subconscious mind is the bulk of it. Now, what happens is, conscious mind is the decision maker. It suggests the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind, although it cannot make the decision of its own, but it follows and uses its strength to make that decision into action. It brings it into practicality. So, when we continuously suggest something to our subconscious mind, our life will be shaped by that particular suggestion. How? Because suppose we are, as we are talking about the mental health, right? Mental hygiene. Those who are maintaining the mental hygiene, they have the robust mental health. So, what is the exact basis of this mental health? What is the basis of this mental hygiene? We have to keep a robust, a strong mental health. We have to keep a positive outlook towards life. And how is it possible? It is possible if we continuously feed our subconscious mind the positive things. It is very interesting. I will just briefly explain a few points here. All the initiated disciples of Sri Thakur perform a particular ritual in the morning, which is called the Ishtabhriti. And Ishtabhriti, as we all know, it is a kind of voluntarily offering to our ideal. Okay, no problem in that. But before going into the core of the Ishtabhriti, there is something which we call Swata Anugya. Now, Swata Anugya, if we translate it, it is called auto suggestion. And I'm guessing in all the audiences also there are various psychiatrists and psychological learned scholars who are in the field of psychology. They know about this particular principle of auto suggestion. Auto suggestion means rewiring or rebooting my mind in such a way that it goes only in the positive direction. That is the power of Sata Anugya. Why? Because every single day, an initiated follower of Sisi Thakur goes on repeating in front of his guru that I am free from all the vices, I am free from anger, I am free from ego, I am free from lust, and all the vices there is. So, what is happening here? Every single day, an initiated follower of Sisi Thakur is training his mind without even knowing it. He's rebooting it, he's detoxing it, detoxing all the negativities that is coming up in front of him, that is coming up and clashing him, that is coming up to stop him. So, the initiated follower, without even knowing it, does it. That's Swata Anugya or auto suggestion. That is a very important and very strong point of psychology. I will just finish my this answer with a very interesting and humorous story actually. In the eastern part of our scripture, there is a story that a man was very tired by all the daily activities. After that, he came down under a tree to rest. When he sat down under the tree, under the shade of the tree, he was thinking that I am feeling hungry. Let me have some food. It would be so better if I had some food. And then and there, at the blink of the eye, very delicious food items were presented in front of him. He was not aware where it is coming from, but he was so much hungry that he started feeding upon it. So he finished his food. After finishing, he thought, okay, now I am completely full. It would be better if I had some arrangement of bed, right? So I could sleep and get some rest. So after a while, as soon as he thought, then and there a bed with nice pillow and all the bed sheet and all everything luxurious it came in front of him, and he got rest. After he woke up, he was thinking, what is happening with me? Because whatever I am thinking, it is coming down to me. Be it food, be it bed, everything is coming. Is there any ghost around this place? He was terrified. Is there any ghost who is giving all this thing? As soon as he thought about the ghost came to him into being, and he was thinking, okay, the ghosts have already come. Now they will strangle me. The ghost came and strangled him. What happened here is he was sitting under a tree called Kalpataru. Kalpataru means the tree which grants all the wishes. This is a story which we have all heard or read. So my point is our subconscious mind is something like that of Kalpataru, because the mind is so strong and so strong it is that whatever suggestion it receives, whatever suggestion it feeds upon, it brings that into action. If it receives positive suggestion, it will produce positive results. If it receives negative suggestion, it will produce negative results. So in order to control it, the first thing is we have to accept a guru. Under his commands, under his teachings, we have to follow him. As for example, the initiated members of Sisi Thakur follow Sisi Thakur to such an extent that every day, every single day, they wake up early in the morning, even before sunrise. They go for meditative sessions for 45 minutes, 1 hour. They do meditation. For this meditation, throughout the day, they are happy. It is a fact that meditation makes us happy. All the happiness hormones or the euphoric hormones, they are released in the brain. All the chemical mediators are there. This is a fact, not just a spiritual mumbo jumbo. This is a fact, a highly scientific fact. So they do meditation, they do Ishtabhiti, as we have already talked about. They do yajan in the workplace, in the environment. They talk about the principles of being and becoming and how happy they are by following them. They follow sadachar, the principles of hygiene. Because, and it is a fact that after this pandemic, the situation has become so worse that after this pandemic, everyone is compelled to follow the principles of sadachar. Then they follow Swasthani, the 5 principles which we have discussed. Like this every single day, and you have rightly pointed out the taking of Thankuni leaves, Sentinel Asiatica, and it cures all the diseases in every system. There are medical journals which are evidences which cures kidney diseases, eye problems, ear problems, everything it cures. So regular intake of Thankuni leaves has been recommended by Sisi Thakur. So my point is that to keep this thing, in balance, to keep this mind and body and spirit in balance, in coordination, we have to first and foremost follow a guide, a teacher. After being the disciple, that discipline will come. With that discipline, we can be healthy, we can be happy, and likewise, we will lead our lives in such a way that the diseases, the ailments do not even touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Ideal centricity is at the core of everything. And that's what we have been talking about in all our sessions so far. Thank you so much, Dr. Nath, for talking about it and helping us understanding the subject even more. Thank you. And now, time for some audience questions. May I please have the audience questions on screen? Well, we have a question which says, by Ridhanand Mahapatra, my mind keeps receiving negative impulses all the time. How can I protect my mind, keep my calm, and respond to these impulses?
Okay, so first of all, as have already discussed, there are three basic aspects of hygiene. To keep the health intact, we have to follow the principles of hygiene or sadachar. So, in that particular field of sadachar, there are three aspects. One is the physical sadachar, one is the mental sadachar, and the third one is spiritual sadachar. Now, the point which I want to discuss here, to keep the negativities away, we have to strongly adhere to the principles of spiritual sadachar. I remember an incident when Sisi Thakur was asked that what is the most important part of the sadachar? I mean, physical sadachar, mental sadachar, or the spiritual sadachar? So Sisi Thakur explained that all the three parts are actually the three different aspects of a single entity. Sadachar is the single entity, and physical, mental, and spiritual beings are just the parts or branches of it. But Sisi Thakur again says that, but if you want to understand that which one is the most important, I would say that spiritual sadachar is the motor which keeps it running. Why? Because whatever we talk about, just today we have discussed that we have to keep mental well-being, we have to keep our mind strong, we should not feed the negative influences to our mind, we should always keep our mind healthy. All these things are theory, but when we are going for putting it into practice, then always negativities will come. There are
Very
situations when we are depressed, we are anxious, we are angry. Then in theory it is something different, but when we are putting it into practice, it is very difficult. But that also can be achieved. How? By following the principles of spiritual sadachar. The first and foremost thing of spiritual sadachar, as we have discussed, is following the commands of the guru or the spiritual teacher. Now, the spiritual teacher will guide us to do certain exercises. For example, if we want to keep our body healthy, we do certain exercises, yoga, walking, etc. So that in that particular way, if we want to keep our spiritual health intact, then we have to follow some spiritual exercise. For example, meditation or prayer. All these things are the spiritual practices, because it is a highly scientific fact. I am just touching it briefly, because when we do meditation, when we are giving 45 minutes to 1 hour daily in meditative routines, then what happens is our body, our mind generates a few chemicals which are very important for our well-being. This feeling of happiness or euphoria comes by certain chemical mediators. There are certain hormones, serotonin is there, dopamine is there, and certain chemical mediators are there, which gives us the feeling of happiness. When there is a loss of such hormones, when there is shortage of such hormones, then there will be sadness or sorrow, because where there is no happiness, there will be sorrow. That is logical. So this meditation, there are medical journals which suggest that this meditation session produces such hormones. And also there is one important thing, that when we are following the commands of the guru, then automatically there is a happiness that I am fulfilling something, I am doing something for him, I love him, and because of that love I am doing something. That you are rightly mentioned just a few minutes back, that you don't forget to take thankuni, but sometimes you forget to take the vitamin supplement, because there is a connection, there is a bonding between guru and the disciple here. So guru has asked something to do, guru has asked me to take thankuni, so I will be taking thankuni, that I cannot even forget. So this is what we have to do here. Every single day the situations, the environment will be worse, and that is not in my control, that is beyond my control. I cannot do anything about that. I cannot change the way the world goes
Absolutely.
on, but I can change the way I am receiving the impulse. That is what we have to do.
Absolutely. And another thing, so one part you said about meditation, and another which Srishi Thakur has always, talked about, is helping the environment. You talked about in the principles of Sastvani also. He said that, thinking about well-being of others leads to our own well-being, right? In one of the messages in Satyanusara. Now, again, there, if you look at the medical journals, it says that when we help somebody, right, it releases happy hormones like the serotonin, dopamine, reduces cortisol levels. And this is called, the term is called helper's high. Okay, so again, look at this, right? There's a scientific connection that when we help somebody, automatically we become happy, and that is maybe what Shisha Thakur talks: well-being, our own well-being, thinking for the well-being of others. It leads to our own well-being, and that is what I thought I would add on to the part of meditation which you are talking about. Okay, any other question? I just saw, yeah. Okay, can you recommend some ways by which we can stop aging? Well, we all want to do that.
Okay, first of all, there are certain things in medically we talk about aging. See, first of all, we have to understand this that this particular topic of this today's session is mind, body, and body, mind, spirit connection, and that is directly correlated to this question because see, aging is dependent upon the impulses which we are getting and how we are letting that impulses to affect us. That is the first point. There is an incident where Sisi Thakur says that day in and day out, every single day, the impulses, the clashes which we face, the conflicts which our nervous system face day in and day out, they are so massive that it can lead humans as persons, it can lead humans to untimely aging. We can see the examples here. Even in the ages of 40, 35 to 40, people are looking like they're 50 or 60s because there are a lot of stressful situations going on these days, basically, and it is very difficult for the common people to get rid of it. Sisi Thakur is saying that there is a probability that these nervous system, our nerves, are so much stressed out that aging can occur at any time. Anytime that aging process can start there. And also he says that if that clash, if that conflict of nervous system goes on, then what will happen? Untimely death may also follow. We all have heard stories about that. I have heard about the case in 25-year-old male, which is a ripe year of 25-year heart attack has taken place. 30-year-old person has suffered brain stroke. So what is happening here? The main nerve system, the nerve which we all have, they are subjected to continuous stress, and we do not know any method to get rid of it. So this sudden onset of age has become a problem, and sometimes many ailments, many diseases follow it. Many diseases of the nervous system follow it. So Sisi Thakur gives us a very scientific solution to this problem. He says that like the rudder of a ship, like the anchor of a ship, if you keep the ship without any anchor, the waves will let it flow like its own. It will take it into the sea wherever like it wants. But we have to follow that anchor. That anchor is the guru. So sorry. So when we are following that anchor, when we are using that anchor in the ship, then only all those problems will not follow us. So that is why in the life also, when we have that anchor, when we have that spiritual guide, when we follow him continuously, then what will happen? That external forces will not be able to have its impact on me. I will be always be aloof. I will watch the everything going on like a like an observer, like an audience. That is what our seers or our rishis of the great eastern in part of the globe has always recommended. That be like that aloof, like an observer. You observe everything, but don't get involved in it. That is what comes when we follow a spiritual teacher, when we follow a guru, and that is what it is recommended here also. Because no medicine can stop aging, no medicine can save one from death, but adjusting our go of life can surely increase our lifespan and also reverse aging for that matter for some point of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then do watch out for your diet as well, what you are taking in. Be
Absolutely,
mindful of
absolutely.
what you are eating because definitely there is a correlation with aging. And Shishi Thakur said that when we have a certain kind of diet, our cells need to work all the more harder to process it, and which actually triggers the aging process as well. We know aging and cell division is related to each other. So maybe people can watch out for the diet as well, and we have talked about it in many of our sessions how vegetarian diet helps us all in life and growth. Yes, question on screen please. Okay, what is the easy way to deal with any kind of mental disease? Medication or meditation?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. So first of all, as we have already talked about and we have heard about it many, I would say many sessions or read about it in school, prevention is better than cure. Absolutely. So any medication for that matter, it cannot completely cure the mental illness as it is. There are continuous sessions of consultations. There is continuous sessions of encouraging the patients and all. Everything is there. So it is a kind of hotspot or chaotic situation to come out of it. But the best way is to prevent it. Any kind of mental disease, it is better to prevent it without getting affected and taking medication. It is better to already avoid it, to already prevent it by the sessions of meditation. So it goes without saying that meditation is absolutely better. Not just the meditation, it is not just the meditation we are talking about. It is a following a complete set of principles throughout the day, every single time. It is not that we are doing meditative sessions twice a day as recommended by Sisi Thakur. Here also, I want to add a few lines here. Sisi Thakur has said in a verse that in Bengali it goes on like that: "Ushay nishay mantro sadhon চলাফেরায় job, যথা সময় ইষ্ট নির্দেশ মূর্ত করাই তপ." So, as a kid, when I used to hear it or read it, I always had this question that why Sisi Thakur is recommending these two times, Ushai and Nishai, that is at the before the beginning of the dawn and in the late at night. After going to the, after being growing up, after certain consulting certain journals, I came to understand that we have something called pineal gland, and that pineal gland is activated twice. Twice in the sense it is activated actually in the late at the night, but mostly it is said that after 2 o'clock in the night, 0200 hours to 6:30 in the morning, the secretion of pineal gland is the most. That is melatonin secretion is the most. That is why Sisi Thakur says because concentration at those two times is the most. So naturally, if we meditate at that time of the day, this two particular time of the day, then we'll definitely get benefited. And of course, it goes without saying that meditation is much, much better than medication. Thank you.
Any other question? So looks like they're an okay. So new diseases are emerging every now and then. For some of them, no cure has been invented. Absolutely. How can we future-proof our health and life with certainty?
That is actually a very good question. So there is actually no guarantee. Means in certain people, if we talk about the general population, people say that we have no guarantee. What will be happening if new diseases are coming day by day? Like we have already discussed or heard in many situations that this corona pandemic could not affect the humans. That is what we have been taught in our medical colleges also. But we have seen the mutation, we have seen what happens. Unpredictably, this virus has changed its course, and now it is affecting humans all over the world. It is wreaking havoc all over the world. So, what is the guarantee? How can we foolproof it? How can we future proof our health and life with certainty? I would say the first thing here is to make our lifestyle in such a way, to lead our life in such a way that there is no scope of any disease or ailments there. Sisi Thakur says that there is always a cause and effect relationship. He used to say karjo karan samporko. Karjo karan samporko means there is always cause and effect. Nothing comes out of nothing. Nothing comes out of nothing. So in this cause and effect relationship, if we follow the principles of health, we will be healthy. It is as simple as that. So Sisi Thakur dictates us, gives us few points, as we have already discussed the 5-point principle of Sisi Thakur. Yajan, yajan, ishtabriti, swastani, and sadachar. What happens is, all these principles are so strong that not just this pandemic, if there is to come any pandemic in the future also, and scientists are already talking about it, that many pandemics are there which could come in the future, in the near future too. But any pandemic for that matter would not affect us if we follow the principles correctly. I would just briefly give an example of an incident. In 2020, 2019-20, when this pandemic came, I was talking to one of my knowns who is an initiated follower of Sisi Thakur and is currently staying in United States of America. He has a 12-year-old son. And as we know, the initiated members of Sisi Thakur, they are well versed in the Sadachar or hygienic principles. So washing hands and keeping our clothes and utensils clean is not a new thing in the families of Satsangis. But on the contrary, in the western part of the world and even in the eastern part also, those who are not initiated followers and those who do not follow these teachings of the seers, they are not well versed in all those things. These things are new to them. Washing hands or keeping distance and everything is new to them. So he was saying that, my relative, he was saying that by observing his kid, who is just a 12-year-old kid, many grown-ups of America are astonished that how is he performing all these things which we are struggling to follow. But your kid, he does everything. He comes back to home. He, changes his clothes. He washes his hands, his feet. He doesn't put his hands into his nose or mouth. Even the grown-ups have to be trained to a particular extent to follow this, according to them, stringent set of rituals. But this 12-year-old kid was doing it smoothly. Why? Because he is a follower of Sisi Thakur and because he has been trained to do so. He has observed his family and seen his family to do so. He has been trained from the very birth, from the very beginning. That is why Sisi Thakur says that even if the next pandemic or something like that happens, if in near future anything like that happens, we as Satsangis or those who are initiated followers of Sisi Thakur, if they are following their guru, their spiritual teacher, exhaustively, completely surrendered, they have completely surrendered to him, then there is no fear at all. Because as we have already discussed, that 90 to 95% diseases are mainly because of faulty lifestyle. Sisi Thakur adjusts that faulty lifestyle. He adjusts our go of life. So if we follow that healthy lifestyle, automatically we'll be healthy, and our health and life will certainly be future proof. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for enlightening us today. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience would have also learned as much. Thank you so much. And maybe, this brings us to the end of our session today. We definitely wanted to go on and on, but then we do have to respect time. Uh, in conclusion, I would like to say that let us take charge of our health, our well being. Let us inculcate good habits, take care of our body, mind, emotions, thoughts, and beliefs. Let us be ideal centric. Let us have a guru, and let the commandments, the willingness, the enthusiasm in fulfilling the commandments or the guidelines set by our guru move us forward in the path of health and happiness. It's a festival of Holi here in India today. We were celebrating it yesterday and today. To my audience in India, a very happy Holi to all of you. And may the colors of health and happiness lit up your uh, lives. Thank you so much. And let me sign off now with a promise to come back again with yet another session from the house of Team Cradle. Thank you and take care.